Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Um, we'll start with introductions. I'm Carissa Anthony. I'm the Prevention and Development Coordinator here at Homewood City Schools. I also coordinate the Safe and Healthy Homewood Collaborative, which is a youth substance prevention group. And part of, substance abuse prevention is also talking about mental health and mental wellness, which all leads into, suicide prevention and awareness too. So one lovely lady that came to us back in August and said, "Hey, I'd love to volunteer. I'm kind of new in the community," is Miss Candace Headland. And she has been a gem. We are so lucky to have her. She's a native of Mobile, Alabama, worked mostly in South Alabama for many years, but has recently moved up here and has a husband and two kids, one of who's already at Edgewood Elementary. So she is very quickly becoming a fixture here in Homewood. So we're thankful to have her today because she is a clinical mental health, has a degree in clinical mental health counseling, and brings with her really a wealth of experience that can benefit our community, and she's willing to share with our community. Candace previously worked as a coordinator for suicide prevention, where she ran the southern region of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. She also initiated and facilitated the Suicide Prevention Network of Alabama, which had brought people who work in suicide prevention across the entire state together. Candace is a certified QPR instructor, which, as you can see from the screen, is question, persuade, respond. And she has been providing this type of training in multiple settings, to organizations, to schools, to nonprofits, and even to, we were talking before we got started, even in the medical field. She's done a lot of this. So I'm so thankful for Candace to join us and be with us today and offer her expertise. I'm going to turn this over to her. I will tell you, your video and your microphone are turned off. We are recording this program, but you still can communicate with us through the chat, especially if you have a question, and we'll get to those questions at the end. We'll open it up and have time for question and answer. If you're unfamiliar with Google Meet, which some people are, at the bottom of your screen to the far right is a little message box. And so that's where your chat is located. So feel free, if you have questions or anything, to drop it in there. So without further ado, Candace, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carissa. And I'm so excited to be here today. If you have any questions, please drop them down there. Carissa's going to let me know if they pop up while I'm presenting. But let me go ahead and share this with you guys. All right. So question, persuade, and respond. So we call that QPR. It's a type of suicide prevention training. And it is one of my favorite prevention trainings that I have done. It is just so easy to understand, and it works for everybody. So I do want you to understand that it's not intended to be a form of counseling or treatment for suicidal ideation, but it is intended to offer hope. People will have thoughts of suicide at some point in their life. We want people to understand that this is not uncommon. It doesn't mean you have a mental health diagnosis. It is very common for most people to have these thoughts at some point in their life, whether they act on them or not. It can affect any age group. And this is what makes suicide so scary for us. It can affect anybody, really, any ethnicity, any race, any income, any level of education. Suicide can affect anybody. So there's a lot of myths surrounding suicide, and I like to walk through those as well, because sometimes there's some conversation that needs to be had about some of these. So no one can stop a suicide. It's inevitable. A lot of people believe that if someone is feeling suicidal, there's nothing that can be done. And so what we know about that is if they get the help that they need during their crisis, they'll probably never be suicidal again. So confronting a person about suicide will only make them angry and increase the risk of suicide. So a lot of people won't talk about suicide because they feel like if they bring up the topic, that it's going to cause them to have the thought of suicide. What we know about that is if you are having feelings that someone is struggling with suicidal ideation, they probably are. So confronting them is not going to add any fuel to that fire. If anything, it is validating that someone is noticing how they're feeling. Only experts can prevent suicide. That's not true either. So really it takes a whole community to help prevent suicide. And the most impactful people are the people around that person. They see them every day. They're there for them. If they feel supported, they are much less likely to complete suicide. Suicidal people keep their plans to themselves. You hear this in the media constantly, and it is not true. People do not keep their plans to themselves. We know that most people will convey that they are struggling with suicidal ideation or that they have plans to end their life, usually the week of their attempt. So it may not be the person, if you're a parent, it may not be to their parent. It may be. So listen to those cues, and we'll talk about some of those cues in a little bit, how you can hear them, what they might sound like. Those that talk about suicide don't do it. I worked in schools for a long time, and I heard, oh, that person just wants attention. That really bothered me. It's one of the biggest things that have bothered me that I've heard teachers or parents say. If they're talking about suicide, that's not normal. So we need to give them some attention. We need to figure out what's going on, what's making them say that. And then once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. We know that fortunately, suicide is the most preventable form of death. And there are many positive actions that we can do to save that person. All right. So other facts, males are more likely to complete suicide than females. However, females have more attempts compared to males. When I'm in a classroom setting, I normally ask why we think that is. So I'll just skip to the part where I tell you what it is. Males are more likely to complete suicide because of the method that they are using. Males typically use firearms, and there's not a whole lot of time to rethink that decision once you've pulled the trigger. However, females tend to care about the mess they might leave behind, and they often try to use substances, overdosing, things like that, poisoning, to try to attempt their suicide. What you'll learn through this presentation is that suicidal people do not want to die. People that are having suicidal thoughts do not want to die. They just want the pain to end. So when a person is having these thoughts and they act on them by taking a bunch of prescription pills or things like that, there's a good lag time before that would take effect. So they have time to call the paramedics or tell a friend that can call the paramedics and get the intervention they need that will save their lives. That also doesn't mean that they're not going to have significant health impacts due to what they have taken. I see a lot of times where people have taken significant amount of aspirin or things like that, and they'll have kidney issues or whatnot after that. So it doesn't mean that they're not going to struggle eventually and have issues. It just means that they have not ended their life in that moment by taking those pills. So that's why there's a big difference. And I like to make people aware of that. You'll see when we talk in a little bit that, well, and if the video will play, that there's a person that he'll tell you every person he's interviewed has said as soon as they've attempted, I regret this decision immediately. And you just don't get that when you're using a firearm. Suicide attempts are higher among students who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual compared to students who identify as heterosexual. Suicide rates are also higher in veteran families, especially during deployment of the family member. So that doesn't mean the veteran themselves are just at risk, that the whole family is at risk, especially when that person is deployed. We know that veterans often have firearms in their home. So that's another reason that that number is high. They're around firearms a lot. And it does put a significant stress on the family for them to be deployed. So, suicide clues and warning signs. The more you see of these signs and clues, the greater the risk. But take all of these signs seriously. So, not as often, but sometimes people will have direct verbal clues. I've decided to kill myself. I wish I were dead. I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to end it all. If something doesn't happen, then I'm going to kill myself. Those are direct clues that someone is contemplating suicide. So we definitely want to take those 100% seriously, even if it sounds like a joke. And I will say, there was a little girl that I used to share in my presentations, but she had told her friends that if she did not come back after the weekend, that she had killed herself. She wrote it down in a note, and she was at a football game, and the note got passed around through the stands, so through adults, through kids, and no one took her seriously. They all thought, like, why would you write this down in a note? She must be joking. And they just didn't take it seriously. And she did end up completing suicide. So that is how common or how easy it is for someone to share that they are struggling with suicide and for it not to be taken seriously. Okay. So more often than not, you're going to hear these indirect and coded verbal clues. I'm tired of life and I just can't go on. My family would be so much better off without me. I just want out. Pretty soon you won't have to worry about me. Who cares if I'm dead anyways? These are more likely what you're going to hear, especially from our youth. So if you hear any of these, it's in our nature sometimes to just kind of walk away from that, or to belittle it or play it down a little bit. But take this seriously and have a conversation with them about why it is that they're choosing to say that. So this is Kevin's story. And Carissa, I can try to play it. I think maybe the mics were on last time if you want me to.
Yeah, I would say try it, Candace, and just see. The worst case scenario is we can stop.
Okay, if y'all bear with us, we're gonna try. I would like for you to see these this video, but if not, y'all just let me know if it's echoing. All right.
Lost far too many lives traveling the path to this day.
Since 1937, over 2,000 people have died at the Golden Gate Bridge. I feel lucky to be alive every single day. Of the thousands that have died off the Golden Gate Bridge, I am of the 1% who have survived. So I was born on drugs and premature. And then I bounced around from home to home. Nobody wanted to keep me because I was sick. And I got lucky. I landed in the home of Patrick and Deborah Hines. I had a great childhood. I thought growing up that everything's gonna be great. And then at 17, it all came crashing down. If you can imagine feeling that everyone around you is out to get you, trying to hurt you, and trying to kill you, and you believe that to be the truth. From the extreme paranoia, I exhibited symptoms of mania. From the mania came the hallucinations, both auditory and visual. And so with that and the bipolar disorder, I just was spiraling out of control. I vividly remember writing my suicide note. People don't get it. Like, I thought I was a burden to everyone who loved me, because that's what my brain told me, because that's how powerful your brain is. I got off the bus. I walked slowly down the walkway of the Golden Gate Bridge. People rode by me, drove by me, walked by me, and a woman approached me, and she said, "Will you take my picture?" she said thanks and she walked away. It was that moment I just said, nobody cares. The reality was that everybody cared. I just couldn't see it. I ran forward, and using my two hands, I catapulted myself into free fall. What I'm about to say is the exact same thing that 19 Golden Gate Bridge jump survivors have also said. The millisecond my hands left the rail, it was an instant regret. And I remember thinking, no one's gonna know that I didn't want to die. In 4 seconds, I fell 75 miles an hour, 25 stories, and I hit the water. I was in the most physical pain I had ever experienced, I have ever experienced. The Coast Guard was amazing. He was just so freaked out that I was alive that he just dove in and brought me on board. The guy said, do you know how many people we pull out of this water that are already dead? And I said, no, and I don't want to know. The guy put his hand on my forehead, said, kid, you're a miracle. My father took one step into the hospital room, and I looked up at him and I said, Dad, I'm sorry. And he said, no, Kevin, I'm sorry. And if you think about it, both of our immediate reactions were guilt. Guilt that didn't belong to either of us. And even though I didn't die, I caused people a great deal of grief and pain. Just the day of my attempt still sits within them today. I asked my father if he still feared my death by suicide. He said every time the phone goes off, his first inclination is Kevin alive. I had that impact on my dad. So after the jump, the road to recovery was pretty long. I had 7 psych ward stays in the next 11 years. I still have all the symptoms I ever had. Mania, depression, psychosis, hallucinations, all that's still there. I just know how to cope with it and I know how to beat it. I built a support network over these years of treatment so that I wouldn't be fighting this alone. So like, it's okay not to be okay. It's not okay not to ask for someone to back you up. To the families who live with the loss or losses of loved ones, they didn't do that to hurt you or destroy your life. They took their lives because they were struggling and in a great deal of emotional and mental pain. Suicide, mental illness, and addiction are the only diseases that we blame the person for perpetually. But people die from suicide just like they die from any other organ diseased. Today, no matter the pain I'm in, no matter the struggles I experience, I do believe that life is the greatest gift we've ever been given. And if you're suffering mentally, don't wait like I did, sitting in denial for so long. Because recovery happens. I'm living proof.
Okay. So what I wanted y'all to hear again was him talking about that instant regret. And I know he struggled with mental illness. And that is, there's a lot of mental illness that people struggle with suicide. But it's not all mental illness. So don't let that be your takeaway. What I wish I could have found was his interview where he talks about his dad, who he had a fantastic relationship with. But he talks about waking up that morning and going into his father's room, and he's sitting on the floor, and his father knew something was wrong, and he invited him to go to work with him. And Kevin said, I can't today. I've got a test. And so then he invited to do something with him after work. I can't remember. And Kevin kind of shrugged it off. And Kevin said when he was sitting on the bus driving towards the Golden Gate Bridge, he wished that his father had just said, "Are you feeling suicidal?" He said if he had asked him directly, he wouldn't have been able to lie to him. And that was so impactful for me to hear because his father, he was trying to be there for him. He knew something was wrong, but he just didn't say the right words. And that's the whole thing with QPR, is just asking directly. So we'll get to that in a minute too. Some of the behavioral clues that you might see are previous suicide attempts, acquiring guns, stockpiling pills, gathering chemicals. So depression, moodiness, hopelessness, putting personal affairs in order, giving away prized possessions. We see this a lot with youth, especially. They'll give away things that meant so much to them, to their friends. So sudden interest or disinterest in religion. And what I want you to take away from this is not that, if they're religious, they're not going to complete suicide. That's not what we're saying here. There's been a lot of research devoted to this. And what we have found is that if someone has ties to a religion and they believe in that religion and they practice that religion, if they feel accepted by the other people that have the same views of their religion, then they are significantly less likely to complete suicide. But the flip of that is also true. So if they maybe grew up in church or grew up in a certain congregation and feel like they have the beliefs, they do believe them, but they don't feel accepted by the people that are in that religion, they have a very high chance of taking their own life. So it's a very impactful study that has been done. Drug and alcohol abuse, especially relapse after a period of time of recovery, they tend to feel like they've failed, and they are 50% likely to take their own life if they relapse. So if you have a youth that is struggling with addiction, substance abuse, they really need extra support with this as well. Please be willing to ask them if they're struggling with these thoughts. Unexplained anger, aggression, and irritability. You know your kids. If you know that they are acting different than they have been acting in the past, take that as a red flag. Something's going on. I've met with so many kids that are just perfect. They meet all the standards. They are everyone's favorite, whether it's in sports or in academia. They are high performers, and they wear so much weight on their shoulders, whether it's put there by someone else or put there by themselves. We need to pay attention to those kids. They may be making all A's. They may be the captain of the football team. They may be visibly perfect in every way. They are more than likely putting a lot of weight on their own shoulders. So please be willing to talk to them as well. Chronic truancy, running away. So if you notice that your child, maybe that's been reported that they're not coming to school, maybe they're skipping certain classes, things like that, there's probably a reason other than they're just trying to get away from school. Probably something else is going on that's making them feel like they don't want to go to school. Self-destructive acts. So I say cutting, and I say that not to say that if a child is cutting that they are suicidal. Those are two different things. But if they are cutting and have some of these other things, they are probably pretty likely to attempt hanging around rough crowds, driving dangerously, impulsivity, and increased risk-taking. So what we know there is that they just don't have regard for their own life. So they are more likely to put themselves in very dangerous situations that could end their life. Okay, so situational clues. Being expelled from school, fired from a job, a recent unwanted move, loss of any major relationship. It could be a peer, it could be an adult, death of a loved one or friend. Death is very hard for people to cope with, especially youth. It's typically, they haven't encountered that a lot. And so it's very hard for youth to cope through death. Also, if it's by suicide, We know that there's a contagion factor with suicide, whether it's through media or locally. I can tell you, I worked in Baldwin County for a while, and it was almost daily that we were struggling with someone that had attempted or someone that had completed. We had several completions in Baldwin County over a short period of time, and it spanned from all the way to high school, all the way down to our elementary school. So it was very hard during that time. So if you hear of a local suicide, or there's a lot of talk in the media of that, be cautious. Family problems, or feeling alienated, sudden unexpected loss of freedom, fear of punishment. So this would be more of like punitive punishment. We have the research to support that that's not effective. And when they're fearing that, they are more likely to attempt suicide. Anticipated loss of financial security and financial problems. I know we're talking about students here, but they hear your conversations. They know if you're struggling financially, and this can weigh on them. We know the number one reason for someone to take their own life is feeling like a burden. So if they know they're costing money for you to feed, or for you to house, or things like that, it can weigh on them. Feeling embarrassed or humiliated in front of peers, especially. It may not have seemed like a big deal to you, but if they're acting like it is a big deal, just take it seriously and hear them out. Bullying and a victim of assault. So we have the Jamari Williams Act in Alabama. That's a fifth grader who was 10 years old that took his own life because he was being bullied. At 10 years old. So they're not too young at any point to be being bullied. Victim of assault has a high risk of suicide. But also what I want people to understand, we had a lot of bully prevention programs that we did. And the person that is bullying, the bully, is just as likely to take their own life as the child that's getting bullied. So everyone there has the same risk of suicidal ideation and attempt. So if you know that your kid is dealing with picking on others and things like that, definitely have a conversation with them, see why that's happening, because that'll weigh on them. Fear of becoming a burden to others. Again, that's the number one reason for suicide. Loss of a cherished therapist, counselor, or teacher, even just their teacher for the year that they loved and connected with, that can weigh on them and have a big impact. All right, so other related clues, change in interaction with family and friends. Again, you know your child. If they're just acting differently, sit down and talk to them. Be relentless in this. They may not be willing to tell you the first time you talk to them about it. Recent disappointment or rejection, sudden decline or improvement in academic performance. I get a lot of questions about the improvement piece. So decline, they just don't care anymore. Maybe they're not doing the work to get there. But the academic performance improvement piece, maybe they've been reserved and they've struggled with their confidence, and now they just don't care anymore. So they are more likely to have a positive increase in their academic performance. Physical symptoms, so we call those somatic complaints. Eating disturbances, changes in sleep pattern is big. Maybe they're sleeping more. Maybe they're not sleeping at all. Chronic headaches, stomach problems, even kids that are throwing up, they seem to have something physical going on, but it can all be stemmed back to what's going on in their head, what they're thinking about. And then increased apathy. Okay, so now that we know all the risk factors, how can we help? We've already established that anybody can ask the question. So I'd like to start with the less direct approach. We know that this is not as effective. Just like with Kevin Hines, if his dad had just asked him directly, he said he wouldn't have done it. But the less direct approach, sometimes we start there because it's more comfortable for us. It's more comfortable for us to ask it this way, and then we follow up with a more direct approach. So have you been so unhappy lately that you've been thinking about ending your life? Do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? It's easier for us to say. Even trained counselors have a very hard time asking these questions directly. So again, start here. And if you feel like you can't have this conversation, get someone that can. So the direct way. So directly, you could just ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? We know that again is very effective. It's really hard to lie to someone that's asking directly when they're feeling like this. But you can kind of add some words and a little bit of fluff if it, again, probably more than likely makes you feel better. So when people are as upset as you seem to be, they seem to wish that they were dead. I'm wondering, are you feeling that way too? You look like you're feeling pretty miserable. I'm wondering if you're thinking about suicide. So those are some other ways, and you can probably get creative. But again, just make sure that you're saying, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about ending your life? They need to hear that directly. And again, if you can't do it, find someone that can. Ways not to ask the question. I've even, again, worked with counselors that will phrase things like this because it's very uncomfortable to have these conversations sometimes. So you're not thinking about suicide, are you? We're implying an answer there when we ask like that. We want them to say no because that would be easier for us. It's too uncomfortable for us to have this conversation. You're just kidding about killing yourself, right? So maybe they say, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to take my own life. And your response back is, you're just kidding about killing yourself, right? They're probably not going to tell you the truth at this point. And I will say that sometimes people will say that they're going to end their lives in the most interesting ways. Like the girl that wrote the letter and passed it around at the football stadium. A lot of people were put off by it. They didn't understand why she did that. That just may have been the only way that she could tell someone. So don't worry about how that they phrased it to you. If they've mentioned it, it still needs to be talked about. Asking in this way encourages a negative response from a young person you are trying to talk with. It may also imply that you're frightened by the intensity of their feelings, and they probably are too. So they need you to feel a little more confident when you're asking this, and be aware of your nonverbal clues for sure. So after you've asked the question, what do we need to do? Well, we need to persuade them to get the help that they need. Okay, so listen to the problem and give it your full attention. This is not a time to be distracted by anything else going on. Remember, suicide is the solution to a perceived insoluble problem. Suicide is not the problem. So don't rush to judgment. Don't say, oh my gosh, that's crazy. You don't need to kill yourself. Don't have any language like that back to them, because that's going to make them feel like you don't get it. Offer any hope that you can think of. Hey, I'm right here with you. We're going to get through this together. Also, don't talk about this when you have 10 minutes and need to go to a meeting or something like that. If you're feeling like someone is feeling this way, then you need to just take a pause from life and have this conversation with them and make sure that you're not leaving them in a crisis. We know the best way that this will work is if you have a warm transfer. So physically taking someone to another person that can help them. Will you go with me to talk to a counselor? Can I walk you there? Can we make an appointment together? Can we call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline together? That makes them feel like they're part of a team. Someone understands what they're going through and is going to be there for them. So I know that it's really hard to get into counselors right now. They're not the only people that can help with this. So if you cannot get in with a counselor, then talk to the school counselors. They're there to help. Also, your physicians are there to help. So just make sure that tell everybody that could possibly help, that can get on your team to help this person. If the young person is reluctant, be persistent. Again, especially as parents, sometimes they can be really resistant to us helping them. So just be persistent. Don't say it in a nagging way, but just check in with them constantly. If they told you no, they're not thinking about suicide, and all the symptoms are pointing to it, ask them again. Get someone else to ask them as well. Talk to the person in a private setting. This is not a dinner table conversation for the whole family. This is something that needs to happen in a private environment where they feel safe. Allow the person to talk freely. Again, don't interrupt and tell them how they should be feeling or what they can do. Just be there and listen to them. Give yourself plenty of time. Don't rush off to the next thing, or don't make them feel like you need to be somewhere else. If in doubt, don't wait. Again, ask the question immediately. This is not something you can go to your work meeting and then come back and deal with later. Something might happen in that time frame. If you are feeling like someone is suicidal, if your child, you're worried about their safety, have someone be with them. Even if they're not willing to tell you that that's what's going on, don't let them out of your sight, or someone that you trust. Keep them with someone. Community resources and phone numbers, keep those handy. You can keep them on the fridge. Again, if you feel like your child is maybe feeling this way, I have some little cards that I can drop off with Carissa. I think she might have the green ones and I have the purple ones, but they're really great. They fold up and they stick right in your pocket or in your wallet. They're from ADPH, so you can ask for those as well. I can drop them off with her and you can pick them up from Carissa. And the counselors, I'm sure, have something similar. So just have those resources available. If they're not willing to talk to you, again, don't take it personally. Just have resources there available for them. There's also a text chat and an online chat that they can pull up. Sometimes I've noticed our teenagers prefer to text versus call. So that's an option as well. And don't feel like you're being disloyal. I've had a lot of parents tell me, like, I felt like they were dealing with this, but I didn't want to break their trust. If you're feeling like they're suicidal, if you're feeling like they're having these thoughts, you're not breaking their trust by telling someone. If they're mad at you initially, I promise they won't be mad at you long term. You've saved their life. So just know that it's okay to talk to somebody else. You're more than likely not a mental health professional. So it's okay to turn to someone that can give you more information and help you navigate this. The biggest things you can say, again, are, I want you to live. I'm on your side and we will get through this together. Just making them feel, again, like they have a team, that it's not them, because suicide ideation feels so isolating. You feel alone. You feel like no one else has felt this before. And that's just how it is. So if you team up with them and help them walk through this, it will do a lot for them. Communicate with school counselors and administration. Let them know what's going on. It's okay. Again, if we can just normalize that this happens, it won't be so stigmatizing for them to ask for help. It won't be so stigmatizing for them to have this team of people that will be there for them. If you don't feel like the school is the right way to go with this, or you feel like you need more support, there's other people in the community, whether it's a coach or maybe they have an older sibling or a sibling they're really close to that can help with this. Pastor, a physician, again, anybody else in the community that they may be able to communicate with and be there for them, an aunt or an uncle or whoever it is. Just get everybody, many people as you can on board. And just remember, since almost all efforts to persuade a young person to live instead of attempt suicide will be met with agreement and relief. They're going to be so relieved that someone sees that they are struggling and wants to be there for them. Don't hesitate to do these steps. And know that when you apply QPR, you plant the seeds of hope, and hope is what helps prevent youth suicide. All right, there's tons of resources for suicide prevention out there. I've given you here the statewide resources that we have. And I think Carissa is going to share this so that you have access to this later. But ASPARK's on there. Again, ADPH, Alabama Public Health. SPNA is that organization that it's a lot of community leaders that help prevent suicide. They're there as well. And then Carissa also added the Children's Hospital, which is a great resource to have. That's right here.
I'm reading, I did go ahead and load in the resources that you shared, or at least the major ones in the chat. So I would say as an adult, if you work with youth, if you have children, these are great resources to go ahead and put these in your contact list on your phone, because you just never know when you're going to need them. And it's so easy to hit that share a resource with another parent, when they text you and, they're talking about what they're going through. It's just a good thing to have on hand. So we do have one. Let's see if this is a question. First of all, you've gotten a compliment. They said, thank you very much. This has been very helpful. It said, would you be willing to share your slideshow or have a Google Meet with some peer helper students at Jacksonville High School?
Oh, yeah. I actually worked with peer helper organizations in Baldwin and Mobile counties, so would love to chat. And I do think you are sharing the presentation.
Yes, the presentation has been recorded, so that is something that you guys could have. We're going to be sending this back out through our parent alert system. So I'll be sending it to all of you directly, though, so that you all have a link to it. Give me a few days, though, because it takes, I'm kind of clumsy with the editing software to get a video ready. So it might take me a couple of days to get that out. But I will be sending this because it is recording, or at least it looks like it's recording. So hopefully that's the case. Leah Treadwell said thank you. So you've got another thank you. This is wonderful. Is there anyone who has a question or anything else they want to share?
And I know this topic can be, it's a private conversation that you might need to have. So just reach out if you are needing some additional resources or help.
Yeah, Candace, there was one word that I jotted down that you said kind of in the middle part of your presentation, and you said it's important to be relentless. When you're seeing the signs and symptoms, these warning signs, be relentless. And I think that's the word of the day for me.
It's hard. It's a struggle. And sometimes it can feel like their walls are up and there's just no breaking through, but just keep at it and get support for yourself. If you're struggling with someone that is having these thoughts, definitely build up your own support team because it's hard.